When 15-year-old Guido first saw the new poster ad his father had commissioned from Marcello Dudovic, he must have been completely mesmerized. An alluring lady holding a rose in her mouth, emerging from a red flaming background and sensually embodying the warmth of Liquore Strega, a drink that the illustrator didn't even include in his image. That was La Strega, the witch, who gave the family business its distinctive identity and cast over the liqueur a seductive and spellbinding charm. She had already been the protagonist of two racy ads for the company authored by Dudovic in the early 1900s at the time of Italy's first industrial boom. In one, the illustrator had represented a blue Strega, bent over a shot glass and lifting her skirt while inhaling the drink's aroma in a synesthetic rendering of its pleasure. In the other, Dudovic had portrayed a green Strega, seemingly hiding a secret with her shoulders, with her hair color matching the drink's saffron yellow and the related slogan, "A ray of sunlight turned into liqueur." But this time around, as he worked on a new poster in 1924, things were a bit different, as that year, Mussolini brutally unveiled his ambitions by rigging the elections and silencing any dissenting voices with the killing of Socialist deputy Giacomo Matteotti. In this context of rising fear, Dudovic's red Strega surely must have stirred a reaction of awe and surprise. Can you imagine the fascination, attraction, and sense of freedom that this poster must have produced in a teenage boy from Benevento? Guido Alberti was born in the city in 1909 and had grown up there, spending time in the family factory, embracing its history, and learning how to tell apart the 70 herbs which made up the Strega drink. There was something about their fragrance that always captured his imagination, mentally propelling him beyond the isolation of the province. There was something about the drink's advertising posters that always charmed him, surrounding the family business with an unmistakable aura. Guido's hometown of Benevento, located in between Naples and Apulia, is the capital of the winemaking region of Sannio. In ancient times, it was a strategic outpost. The early Samnite city of Malies, known to Romans as Maleventum, literally bad wind, was conquered by Rome in the Samnite Wars. In 275 BC, the city had become the site of a famous battle, pitting the Romans, who had ambitions in southern Italy, against the Greeks, led by Pyrrhus, whom the inhabitants of Taranto had called upon for help, and who had won 2 battles, albeit with heavy losses. You might have heard the expression Pyrrhic victory, which refers to these events. As the Romans defeated Pyrrhus in Maleventum, making their way into the south of Italy, they renamed the city Beneventum, good wind, and made it an important post along the Via Appia. The poet Horace memorialized it in a famous satirical poem which relates his travel on the Appian Way from Rome to the Apulian port of Brindisi. After centuries of Roman control, the city was destroyed by an earthquake in 369 AD, the first recorded of many, the most recent of which took place in 1980. And after barbaric invasions, the city regained its status in the early Middle Ages, first as the capital of a Lombard duchy, and then as a Byzantine principality. It was around this time that the pagan legend of witches started to spread, as a transfiguration of local suspicions surrounding residual cults to Diana. It was this legend that inspired Giuseppe Alberti, Guido's grandfather, to name his drink Strega centuries later. Giuseppe owned a bar in the city, and over the years he had perfected the drink whose recipe he had received from a local Benedictine convent. In 1860, at the time of Garibaldi's expedition in the Kingdom of Two Sicilies, Giuseppe started his company, naming his drink Strega in homage to this local tradition. Against the backdrop of Italian unification, the name did not suggest a bad omen or a curse, but rather a good wind, Beneventum, and a warming wish of unity for the new nation, offering a metaphor of its hope for synthesis of different flavors and identities. That good wind, that aura, magic, or spell surrounding the drink was and still is the secret recipe of the company's success. A famous slogan from the 1960s summed it up in a play on words. Il primo sorso affascina, il secondo strega. The first sip intrigues, the second bewitches. La strega, the witch, or lo strega, the liqueur, had also bewitched his grandson Guido, moving him to join his family business from an early age. Guido's father, Vincenzo, had made the brand popular in Italy and the world in the early 20th century, thanks to a targeted investment in visual communication and the successful illustrations by top-rated artists like Marcello Dudovic and Fortunato De Pero. So Guido grew up with the fresh beauty of these posters in his eyes and the distilled fragrances of herbs in his nostrils. As he got more involved in the family business, he never forgot the wonder and imagination that the drink had evoked since he was a child. And perhaps that was his space of freedom during the years of the dictatorship, and during the war as well, when the company was forced to relocate to Rome. In October 1943, Benevento suddenly found itself at the center of the conflict. A month after the Italian armistice, the Allies bombed and occupied the city, destroying the Strega factory and preparing their advance toward the Liri Valley. From there, they would reach the Gustav Line by the end of the year and Monte Cassino in the spring of 1944. During this time, Guido Alberti was in Rome, which would soon be occupied by the Nazis and freed on June 4, 1944. You might recall Rossellini's neorealist masterpiece Rome Open City, which documents the cruel occupation of the capital. As war tragically unfolded in front of their eyes, Guido and a group of journalists and artists from different political affiliations clandestinely gathered at the house of writer Maria Bellonci and her husband Goffredo. They just called themselves Gli Amici della Domenica, Sunday Friends. Their goal was to find a space of freedom amid desperate times and to keep some sort of cultural life alive in Italy. Bellonci, a close friend of Guido, was a popular author at the time. She had made her debut in 1939 with a biography of Lucrezia Borgia, published by Mondadori, and she had written popular profiles of Renaissance families, so like the Gonzagas, the Estes, the Della Roveres. Her masterpiece would be her biography of Isabella d'Este. Now, the Sunday meetings at her home had continued after the liberation of Rome, and after the war, her salotto, or club, had become a lively space of imagination and cultural reconstruction. It was at this time that Bellonci and Alberti decided to set up a literary prize to provide Italian writers with an occasion to create new culture and reconstruct a shared national imagination. The contest was called Premio Strega, as Alberti's brand sponsored it. And over the subsequent decades, the prize would become the most important literary award in Italy, consecrating authors like Pavese, Buzzati, Morante, Ginsburg, or closer to us, Mazzucco, Mazzantini, Ammaniti. The first edition took place in 1947 and was won by Ennio Flaiano, then writer for Fellini, with his shocking novel Tempo di Uccidere, breaking the silence over the fascist colonial campaign in Ethiopia. In 1989, Time to Kill would be adapted into a film starring Nicolas Cage. For Guido Alberti, the prize marked the reconfiguration of the drink from a known brand into a center of creativity, and of his business, which also entailed a confectionery part, from an industrial manufacturer to a piazza of imagination. The magic of the Strega that he had seen in Dudovic's posters had now turned into a hidden rebuilding force. In the post-war years, Alberti's entrepreneurial imagination would go hand in hand with his enchantment for storytelling, in connection not only to the literary prize, but also to cinema. In 1957, he became the president of Liquore Strega. That would be the year when Giuseppe Tomasi di Lampedusa died, before authoring Il Gattopardo, the Leopard, one of the most important novels of the 20th century, published posthumously in 1958 and awarded the Strega Prize in 1959. In 1963, Alberti made his debut in Federico Fellini's masterpiece 8½, playing the character of a producer pressuring a filmmaker, the protagonist, in search of inspiration. The 53-year-old beginner would become a well-known actor over the following decades, working with directors like Francesco Rosi, Roman Polanski, Pierpaolo Pasolini, and Mario Monicelli, and acting alongside Marcello Mastroianni, Anthony Quinn, Virna Lisi, and Claudia Cardinale. He would die at 87 years of age in 1996, bringing the company to success with the double lines of liqueur and nougat sweets, and leaving a profound mark on Italy's cultural imagination, both with the Premio Strega and in his journey as a movie actor. Similar case of the artist-entrepreneur can be found today in Giovanni Ferrero, CEO of the famous chocolate company and author of 5 novels. Now, Alberti's path leads me to a couple of important questions. What does literature add to a product? What does a drink say of the power of literature? The case of Strega certainly resembles that of Campari, a product that becomes a platform for the arts, a drink that stems from a variety of elements, a mixer that generates an endless combination of stories. Like Campari, Strega crafted its communication in dialogue with literature and cinema and produced a drink that embodied multiple personalities based upon the isolation of patterns, in this case herbs, and their infinite blending. The craft of mixology at the base of the liqueur and also of Campari cocktails is a good metaphor for the combinatory game of literature itself. In 1969, the Italian writer Italo Calvino played with this idea in his experimental novel The Castle of Crossed Destinies, relating a deck of tarot cards to the creation of unpredictable storylines. Following the random disposition of cards on the table, he portrays storytelling as both a witchery, magically bringing to life multiple unexpected solutions, and a game, allowing us to experience the endless dynamism and variation of life itself. What is this magic for? What do these stories do, you might ask? Well, we tell stories to participate in the rhythm of our existence, of our days, light and darkness, of our breathing in and out, of our seasons, winters and springs. We tell stories to isolate the value of details, the quality of things, the distinctiveness of each element. We tell stories to regain the taste of living as both knowledge and flavor, as indicated in the double meaning of the word sapere in Italian. If you think about it, just as the enchantment of a story makes us whole again, so does a drink, which similarly aspires to stir up the freshness of life and renew in us a warm sense of our being. In this sense, the witchcraft of La Strega is not only the secret quality that makes a product appealing, but also an intrinsic metaphor for literature itself, as a space of freedom, imagination, and fiction opposed to any reductions to unilateral narratives, a space of genuineness and authenticity beyond any imposition or restraint. In this sense, the Strega of Dudovic must have been for young Guido like the siren of Tomasi di Lampedusa's short story Ligea, one of the most wonderful novelle of 20th century Italian literature, published in 1960 and relating the youthful encounter of a university professor with a mythical marine creature. In her, the old man realized he had discovered the living source of love and knowledge. In her, he had seen the beauty he could no longer forget. Perhaps this was the intuition of young Guido Alberti marveling at the magic of Dudovic's poster. Perhaps it was in his Strega that he first experienced the bewitching power of stories. Perhaps, like the professor, it was in that wonder that he decided to pursue a truly unique entrepreneurial and intellectual adventure in search of the beauty that never fades. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this presentation, I invite you to subscribe to this YouTube channel or to the webpage www.italianinnovators.com to receive notifications of new episodes. You can also follow me on my LinkedIn profile or on Instagram at Italian Innovators for additional materials about the show. Thanks again. Arrivederci e alla prossima.